But what I'm seeing is that this is spacing out the reaction from the actual stimulus that created that reaction. So when I'm saying heightening one's consciousness, what I'm saying is like the space in between those. And you can, when you first do it, you might have to tear it open because you're so connected to the reaction, you don't even see the space there.
Okay, so Andy, we're on to chapter 5. And in chapter 5, you talk about triggers. And you have this distinction between conscious and unconscious. And this may be obvious to some people, but I'd like you to explain, what do you mean by this and why is this important?
Yes, I look at this, I almost have to chuckle when I answer this question because it's an experience. So I'm trying to put in words an experience, and I guess the best way to do this, like I think, like this is the experience, and this is my reaction to the experience, and then those two, they could snap together, and I don't see any space there. And I often use the term, I am now my thoughts, or I'm a reaction to my thoughts. No freedom in that. You do something and I can trigger a behavior in you, almost like a Pavlov. I can just ring the bell and you'll salivate. So you have no freedom because in that, the thought joint comes up and then reaction. And so when I'm saying making that unconscious more conscious, it would be that I would almost say, taking it, if I'm looking far out, and then I bring it closer and closer, I actually start to see the gap that's in between those two. And people might say it's more mindfulness practices. They might say they're meditating on what it is that's going on. But what I'm seeing is that this is spacing out the reaction from the actual stimulus that created that reaction. So when I'm saying heightening one's consciousness, what I'm saying is like the space in between those. And you can, when you first do it, you might have to tear it open because you're so connected to the reaction, you don't even see the space there. So the freedom comes when you start to take a deep breath, say, well, what's going on there? And then you see in, and that's when you're heightening consciousness around a trigger.
Great, and I know that one of the things that I get to add here is that I know that there's only 5 triggers.
Yes.
So people can get aware of them. So there's security, which is the need for certainty and no change. There's autonomy, which is the need to feel I'm in control of my own destiny. There's fairness, which is the need to be part of equal exchanges. There's esteem, which is part of where I lie in a social hierarchy. And then there's trust, which is about this in-group, out-group bias stuff and wanting to be a part of a group of people just like me. And each of those things can be a trigger. And it's funny talking about triggers because, at least for me, so I get stupid, right? So I read a lot, I know a lot of stuff, I have a lot of strong opinions, as everybody knows. But when I get on Facebook, that becomes a monster.
Yeah.
And I'm scrolling through and I see a person who I respect, maybe they were a Boy Scout leader when I was young, or they're a professor, somebody at school, or they're a consultant that I really respect, and they posted a meme, a stupid meme, and I get triggered by it because it's absolutely is not true, right? It's wrong, or it's totally misunderstood, or in the context it's totally misunderstood. And so I will spend a half an hour writing a quasi-mini paper response to why they need to look at this thing differently. And I have 50,000 other things to do. And of course I spend time on Facebook writing these stupid long things that nobody cares about because it's just a meme. But it's an example of the trigger for me. And
what is that trigger? Because you named the 5. So which of those triggers is it?
This is where the awareness comes in. It actually took me some thinking to figure out what the heck it was. And what I found is when I have a person who's like a scoutmaster or who's this professor that I respect or something, when they post something that I don't see as being true or I know is not true from other sources, it like lowers their esteem in my mind, and it like makes them not part of my group. It's like we were together and now we can't be.
Yeah.
And so I feel like clarifying it and getting some closure there allows me to like reconnect with them somehow. It allows them to be back in my in-group. And the problem is my writing probably pushes them further away. Yeah. So being aware of that trigger and being able to smile and just, swipe past becomes really important. But until I really understood my underlying goal, what I was being triggered by, it was really hard to take the useful reaction for preserving a relationship or growing a relationship, maintaining a relationship, whatever.
Yeah, and we know Facebook isn't the best forum to have a meaningful dialogue usually.
Right. But the tough thing about the triggers is when you identify you have one,
Yeah.
and you identify what's there, and then you want to go and change your habit, you've been doing, at least for me, I've been doing it for so long
Yeah.
that it's easy to self-justify. Well, of course this is the right way to react. Of course this is the
Yeah.
thing to do. Of course this person is, fill in your adjective. And it's really hard to break free from that unless you really look at what's triggering me and how do I actually get to that place, or how do I
Yeah.
just see it in that place.
And I often see that associated with tears. Like I don't see the rationalization of that trigger. It's like, oh, there you are.
Right.
An emotional connected space where it's like, oh, I love you, you're there, it's okay, and now I move on.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of people will think if I rationalize and understand the trigger softens, and that's not really the case. It's more of I logically get it, but I don't make peace with it. And we'll get into that in later chapters as well.
Or I logically get it and I use it as a justification for why I keep behaving.
For why I keep, of course. That's even better. Yeah. In my case, I see a trigger that's come up for me, and you can put it into the 5 categories. I've been waiting to see where Ronnie and I will be living, and it's been 6 months, and there's a job that may or may not exist, no offer, all of the uncertainty. And so I think for the first 3 months, I was like, surrender, it'll happen, whatever happens is great. And then like 4 months in, I'm like, okay, this is getting old, like someone has to change. And so, and I could see the trigger was, I was no longer patient with what the process would unfold, how the process unfolded. So how would that fit into your...
It's the security trigger.
The security trigger.
Right. It's looking for some certainty about what's coming in the future. But by the way, the triggers are easy to remember. It's safety, right? Security, autonomy, fairness, esteem, trust. And then you could say there's a why for your triggers, individual things. But,
sure.
But so safety is an acronym, easy to remember. And when you're looking for your triggers, just kind of like look at those 5 rather than have a whole universe full of them.